In this lesson, we'll begin modeling out the basic shape for our site. Alright, so we've got everything taken care of as far as our Google Earth situation and making sure our model fits in. So now we can take those crucial measurements that we took earlier and put those to use. So I'm just going to scroll out a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a surface really quick. So let's go to our rectangle tool, and really you can start anywhere. So start at your point, and we're going to type in the 330 feet going both directions here that we measured. So we'll say 330 feet, comma, 330 feet. And that should make this rectangle here for us. So you'll notice immediately how small this rectangle is compared to this. And that's pretty much the reason why we went into Google Earth and, wanted to get the exact measurements so we could start getting our proportions and placement right. So you can tell by now this is pretty large. And it's also chopped up. So let's do two things. Let's group this model so it's easier to control. So highlight the entire thing, type in G, type in Form A for the component name. And now what we'll do is we'll type in, or we'll actually use this, our ruler tool, to take care of those dimensions we measured earlier. It's that 75 feet by 75 feet. So in this case, we know we're working by 10, so let's go ahead and make that 80 feet by 80 feet. So we'll say 80 feet. And what I mean by working by 10s is once we start working with this grid surface, you can actually specify how big each piece of your grid is basically set up, or the size of each grid. And we're going to go on 10s, which is the default, but you can easily switch it. But it's important to keep that in mind as you're modeling this, because it's going to make laying out all your important elements a whole lot easier. So we're moving in increments of 10, so just keep that in mind. So now let's go ahead and grab our model, and we're going to place it according to these two reference areas we have. So I'm just going to grab it from, we'll say this corner here, and we'll take it up here to this point. And I'm going to grab from this side and make sure this side aligns nicely with this line. So we'll grab it, just kind of snap it over. So we're looking good there. Made an additional adjustment here. Not a problem. So now you can see the purpose for those two measurements we made earlier. So we really don't need these anymore. So let's get rid of these reference or ruler lines or reference lines. They can get a little bit confusing at times. Actually, let's keep those in place. So what we're going to do is go on ahead and click on your model. Type in S, and let's scale this guy. Grab the opposite corner, and we're just going to scale it down and bring it down a little bit. We'll scale it to about, we'll say 60%. We'll take a look at that. And you notice as we scale it, we'll also have to drop it back down just a little bit more as well. So nice thing about how we're working is we can actually go back to Google Earth and kind of use that as a reference. So we know we're going to have some parking here. We're going to need to increase our parking here as well on this side. But we want our building to kind of sit here. We want to preserve these plants, creating a unique feature in the middle of our open space in the middle of our building. But we also want to have some mounds and maybe a small water feature running along this area. So with that in mind, this will give us a good idea on how to guide us on how we can scale our model. So now let's go back to our model here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring him down and move him down on the blue axis to where he's touching the face. And I'm going to type in S again, so we'll do S. And I'm going to shrink this down just a bit more. So we'll grab from any one of these opposite corners, and we'll just bring it down. Like so. So that should give us plenty of room to work with on our model. So now we can readjust our positioning. So we'll grab our area here. Just move him to where he clicks on this side. And we'll move on this side to where it clicks over here. And I'm going to make sure I'm moving on my green axis. So now we have pretty good placement of our building. So far so good. Now let's do some measuring real quick. I want to double check some things here. All right. So by us scaling the way we did, it's going to affect our room to, or level to level height. So right now it's at 8 feet. So let's do an additional scale here. I want to increase the height on this a little bit. So we'll go ahead and hit that, type in S, and we can grab from this middle one, and let's increase this up to a point where, we want to make sure we have 12 feet headroom height. So I'm just going to pull up, till about, we'll say 1.5. Go ahead and click out of here. And now I can come back in here and remeasure really quick. I want to make sure I got my floor to floor height right. So I'm just going to measure from here to there. So we can still stand to do a little bit more because we've got to definitely fit our mechanical in there. So I'm just going to come back out here. We'll type in S one more time. We'll highlight our element and then we'll grab this middle one and we'll move it up just a little bit more. So now I should be able to measure this and get a much better understanding of what's going on here. So we'll grab this element, click here, and that's about where I want to be, about 12 feet for my for floor to floor height. So we're in good shape now. So now that we've kind of massaged this together, kind of made things look a little bit better, let's go ahead and start getting in some of our important sidewalks and parking. So as I mentioned, our grid's going to be set up in tens. That'll be what we're using here, but we're not going to use it just yet. But keeping that in mind, we're going to go ahead and lay out some important references. So these are going to be our corners here. So if we go back to our Google Earth, here, we're basically going to set up our parking to where we have 30 feet of distance from the corner here to there, so people can see on the corners and we're not obstructing any sight triangles. Same thing on this side, same thing here, there, up here, and on that side as well. So 30 feet is going to be our magic number. We're also going to have 45-degree parking here as well as on this side. So what that means is we're going to go with depth of 20 feet inward as far as the depth of this parking space. And it'll start to make sense to you here once we start laying it out. So let's jump back. So now let's lay in those measurements. So I'm just going to do my 30 feet for now. So we'll say from that point, we'll say 30 feet. Do the same thing up here. 30 feet. And do the same thing down here. 30 feet. 30 feet. And do the same thing up here as well. 30 feet. And 30 feet. Let's go ahead and finish it out up here as well. So we'll say 30 feet. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I can see that I'm on my red axis here. So we'll say 30 feet. That way we know we're getting the exact measurement we need. 30 feet. So now what this means is I can come back in now and I can say 20 feet. Same thing on this side. 20 feet. And I'll repeat the same thing over here. 20 feet. Down here as well. 20 feet. 20 feet. And last but not least, this corner. 20 feet. 20 feet. And this area here. So now I have the basic geometry in place for what I'm going to be placing. So before we move on to the next lesson, let's go ahead and finish out these corners. Because we're actually going to have part of this corner is going to be cut out. Because this will actually be grass, parking, and we'll actually include a sidewalk all the way around as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to reference this spot so we could stop at that point. And it may not, so it may just be 10 feet in. So we'll click in, we'll say 10 feet. And we'll just close that off. And we really don't need this extra line about right here. We're more concerned about having that line. We can erase anything else later that we don't need. So again, I'm just going to come in 10. Let's do it that way. 10 and 10. Same thing up here. We'll go 10 feet. And we'll just go back 10 feet here as well. 10 feet. Oh, didn't work that time. Let's see if we can get it right this time. 10 feet. Perfect. And we'll finish off this one, and then we'll jump off to the next lesson here. So now I know these areas are going to be grass. Grass is going to be a sidewalk and parking. It'll start to make a little more sense as we start building this out. So now we have the basic reference out for our basically almost completely done, separating our grass from our walkways as well as our parking. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue working with a few more references, and then we'll start getting our actual walkways and parking in place.